We'll go ahead and get started, and this is going to be the last build session for the rocket, and there'll be one more on how to prep the rocket and launch pads and things and safety issues on the final video after this one. So we got all of our fins on, we have the fillets in all three of the bays, and now we need to start working inside the rocket. And first we're going to be talking about the baffle, and going back over it is that the motor goes up inside the rocket. This particular motor is a G80 with a 7-second delay. It means that after it ignites, it'll set off a charge out the top of the motor inside the rocket, and what that does is it blows the upper half of the rocket off to get the parachute out. And so that's very hot gases. And the parachutes are made out of very delicate material. This is the parachute that we're going to be using, and it's a very delicate material. So if we have it exposed to this hot gas, then it's going to melt and get holes in it, and it's not going to function as designed. So what this baffle does is it takes the heat, because of this stainless steel mesh that we have inside here, and it takes the heat out of the hot gases, and it protects the chute. So we're going to start, and we're going to go with bag number 6, and I'm going to take the stuff out, and then I'll show you what's inside here. There's some little tiny pieces. So the first thing we're going to take out is a piece of flat cord. It's nylon cord, and there's loops in both ends. And so what we're going to do is we're going to attach one end of this loop to here. The other end will be attached to the parachute by this quick link, and then that quick link will be attached. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. There we go. Then I'll tighten it down. So all this stuff is inside the rocket. The motor burns 7 seconds. It sets off a black powder charge in here. The charge passes through the baffle, gets cooled down, has enough pressure in here that it blows off the nose cone, which makes the parachute come out. It unfurls, and this parachute happens to be 60 inches in diameter. The reason it's so big is to give more time and air for your projects. This is a military surplus parachute. It was used on cannons for like mortar flares or something. And all the parachutes for this program were donated by a company in San Jose, California named AeroPac Systems, Bob Fortune. And he's the supplier of a lot of military surplus stuff that's used in high-power rocketry. And Bob was kind enough to go ahead and give us all the parachutes for this program. So we'll go over how to pack the parachute and everything, but all the stuff's inside the rocket. Before we get this far along, we need to put some guidance on this rocket. And by guidance, I mean that not like a remote control or computers or anything, but what we're going to do is, if we look in bag number 6, we're going to see a little screw block with a screw in it with a little white plastic button. And what that is called a rail guide. And I'm going to move some of this stuff for a minute. And this is a launch rail right here. That it's 1-inch square, basically piece of aluminum that has slots in it. Well, those slots will accept this little button that will slide up inside there. I can't pull it out. And so by having 2 of these buttons, mounted to my rocket, I can slide this on to the rail, and then wherever I'm pointing this rail, and it should be straight up 90 degrees, that rocket is going to travel up that rail. What we want to have happen is we want the rocket to be at least traveling at 30 miles per hour before it leaves the rail. 30 miles an hour puts enough wind or airflow by the fins so that they can stabilize the rocket by the time it gets off of here. And so we're going to be attaching a screw block inside and another rail button down below here. If your planning on launching on your own and not going to a certified launch, buying and building a launch rail is fairly expensive. So also in bag number 6 is a little round piece of aluminum tubing. And where we would mount that is on the side of the rocket. And we would JB weld this on to the blue line that's there. And we'll do this on a scrap piece that I have once we get done with everything else. So that's another option. That we would get a 1/4 inch steel rod that's 6 feet long. This one's not 6 foot long. And then by having this on our rocket, we would slide the rocket down the rod, and then the rod is what gives it guidance until it reaches the end of the rod. So that's just another option. You do not have to put them both on. You can if you want. So that's in bag number 6. And so what we need to look at first is, while you were building the rocket, hopefully you saw 2 ink crosses or X's, a little perpendicular ink line, a round circle, and then a longer ink line. And we're going to be using those today. The first points that we're going to look for is that when we are putting in the motor tube assembly, we had you mark it with an ink pen and line it up to this first little cross point here. And that's telling us where that screw block is that we glued to the centering ring. So we know where this one is. So we're going to take our drill. We're going to use the little drill bit, which is 3/32, and we're going to drill this cross, and we're going to drill the other cross up here on the rocket. So we're going to get our drill. I'm going to put some of this stuff away for right now. We're going to pull our stuff. We still have all the normal stuff that we've been using. We're going to get our little drill bit. We're going to chuck it up in the drill. We're going to make sure nobody's around. If I want, I can get my rocket stand back over here. And I'm going to drill this point and this point right here. I'm going to put a little mark on my drill bit that I only want to go as deep as my little finger is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of tape on this drill bit. I don't want to go in very far. I don't want to go through the motor tube. So all this is it lets me know when to stop drilling, and it's the width of my little finger. We're going to put this in. We're going to get it started. And we should see little brown shavings coming out. And that's the screw block. And if we see that, that means we have everything lined up right there. This hole up here is going to go much faster because all it is cardboard tubing for right now. And it goes right in. Take the drill bit out. Set the drill bit down, or drill motor down, and now we have two holes in here. We're going to take the little screw, stainless steel screw, and we're going to put it in the red end of the button. And the red end of the button is actually beveled, and when we put it in there, it's nice and flush on top. If I put it in and it's not nice and flush on top, then I have it in backwards, and I'll take pictures of the right way. But if you take the screw and you put it in the red end of the button, we'll be good. Flat blade screwdriver. And we're going to put this button, get it started with our fingers, and then we're just going to screw it in until it's kind of snug. And then we're going to have to put this in there in a minute. Okay, now the next few steps are kind of complicated. The first thing I want to do is make sure that my baffle will slide in the rocket. That end is fine. And that end is fine. Eventually I'm going to slide this all the way down. I'm going to slide it all the way down in the rocket after I attach the shock cord. And I'm going to put epoxy on the inside of the tube. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the stick that we've been using. And now it's important that I hold the stick by the red end. If I grab a hold of the stick by the red end and I put epoxy on the end of the stick and I hold it at the opening of the rocket till the tape is there, that you would see where the epoxy is going to be. And then what I'm going to do is once I get all that epoxy on there, that I'm going to pull this up against the stop that we're going to put in. Okay? So we know that this goes in, that I didn't have to sand any of my JB weld off. We're going to get the shock cord out of bag number 6 and take the rubber band off. We're going to hold the 2 loops in our hand. I'm going to push one loop through here, and then I'm going to take the other loop and pass it through itself. And all I'm kind of doing is I'm making a slip knot and then pulling this all the way through. Does that make sense? Take one loop, push it through the Kevlar loop, and then take the other end and pass it through that loop. So that, again, I'll take pictures. So that we end up with something like that. And the reason we're not tying this off is that we want to be able to get this apart. If I want to replace the shock cord because it's getting worn out, or if I want a longer shock cord, I can take a coat hanger, reach down inside the rocket, and I can hook this part of the loop, I can pull on it and jiggle it, and I can pull this all outside the rocket so it can be replaced. If I was to tie it off here, I wouldn't have that option. So all we're doing is making a slip knot with the loops. We're going to take this, so the loop and everything is towards me. I'm going to take my stick, and all I'm going to do is push this forward. And right now, I pushed it all the way down so it's right here. We're going to be gluing right about where this hole is. So we're going to mix up about 1 inch of epoxy. If we find our 1 inch or 1.5 inch line or our thumb line, we can come back and make up some epoxy. Okay, I'm going to be gluing around this shock cord, and so I'm going to put it down here in my lap, and I'll talk about how I'm manipulating either the shock cord or the dowel, the stick. So I have my glue made up, and remember, I'm going to grab it by the red end, and when I put it in here, I want to put glue, take some glue, and I want to put it in here, not touching anything until I get to the green line. And then I'm going to roll the stick around a little bit. Move it around. Do a little bit more. Turn this one more bay. Pull a shock cord over to my side. And we're going to slowly put a ring of glue on the inside of the rocket using this tape as a guide. So we're going to go ahead and get some glue on here. I have the shot cord pulled out of the way. I'm going to guide this stick in. I don't want it touching anywhere until I get to the point of the tape being level. The tape is level right now, and I'm slowly just moving this around. And I can feel it getting sticky because I'm making contact with the tube inside. Once I roll it a little bit, I'm going to pull it out and put some more glue on. I'm going to rotate this one more time. I'm going to guide this in. I'm holding the shot cord out of the way. I get to where the tape is. And I'm rolling the stick a little bit. Turn it for its last bay. Guide the stick in, not hitting the tube inside until I get to where the tape is. And then I'm rolling it. Pull this out. We're going to clean this off right now. So my SD card filled up. So we're going to clean off the stick. We're going to take the screw out of the screw block. And we're going to take the screw block, which has a 1/4 inch hole in it, and we're going to place it on the stick. And get the rocket that's pushed all the way down there. Put this back on. We're going to take the screw and the rail guide and we're going to screw it into the hole. We're going to start it. It's not going to get tight because it's just cardboard that it's screwing into. And then we're going to have to find some good light so that I can see that screw hole in there, and I can't really find good light. And we're going to take a guess, and we're going to take it so that the wider side is to the outside of the tube where the hole is. I need a flashlight. Once I get that screw and the hole lined up, I can feel the stick moving around. I can feel the screws starting to get tight. And the reason I can't show this to you is because I can't hold it and do it all at the same time. We're just going to snug it up. That's not coming out. And so all I do is twist this and pull up. And the screw block stays inside the rocket. I'm going to take the shot cord and I'm going to pull up against that stop I just put in there. We're going to take the stick, holding the shot cord, and all we're going to do is tap, tap, tap that so that the glue that I put in there is just getting smeared around. And this is an anchor point. If I wanted to take a little bit more glue, I could put it on the very end of the stick. Pull the shot cord out of the way. You're going to wipe the stick off. So once that sets up, my baffle's right here. That screw block is keeping everything in place. So that's a very strong anchor point. So the next thing I'm going to do is that right above this rail button is a round circle. And I'm just going to drill that out too. And what that is a vent, so that when this rocket is put together, and I have this volume of air in here, and I send it up to 1,000 feet or higher, when this air expands, it can come out that hole. If I don't have a vent hole in here, it's possible that this air is going to expand fast enough that it's going to make the nose cone and the parachute come out. So all this is a vent hole. So that's 2 rail buttons. And with this rocket together, I would slide on the first rail button. So now that rocket's not coming off of there. When I stand this straight up and down and I light the motor, it's going to fly up here and come off straight. Those are rail buttons. If I'm flying not with a club, you probably don't want to build your own rail. And so the other item that we can put on in place of the rail buttons or along with, doesn't mean you can't have both, is called a launch slug. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to sand it to rough it up. It's kind of delicate. I don't want to bend it. That's why I'm doing it flat. If I went like this much, I might bend it. I'm just giving it a nice rough finish so that the glues can. I'm going to go to my line and I'm going to put about 6 little tiny drops of super glue on there. I'm going to take the pointed end, put it on the line. I have some tape all torn. I'm going to stick it here because we never want to put bare tape on the cardboard tube. There's one. And then there's 2. If I need some more epoxy, now's the time to do that. We give us a few seconds to set up. That set up faster than I thought. If I want to, I could take a piece of tape and you might want to wait till it really dries before you do this part here. If you want to draw a line, you can. You just want to eyeball it, that's okay. I've already mixed up a little bit more JB weld. I'm going to just take a little bit. And we would do both sides. We're just going to do one on here and the other side's exactly the same way. Put a little bit on. Smooth it out. We want to avoid getting any glue inside the launch lug. And again, this would be, you would be putting this on the actual rocket. And I'm choosing not to do this on the rocket we just built. One more. One final smoothing. We're going to take the tape off. Throw that in the garbage can. And let that set up. And again, once this is set up, we'd come back and do it. That finishes the construction of this rocket. The next video is going to be on rocket safety, prepping this rocket, packing the parachute, and a few other little things. So if you've made it this far in the video, that means you're doing a good job. And again, if you have any questions, it's easier to ask me before it gets to the point where we have to unglue something. So, thanks.